I've always been a man of habit, even in retirement. The same coffee shop every morning, the same crossword puzzle, and the same walk around the city that I had once vowed to protect. It was during one of these routine strolls when I spotted the familiar swirl of red and blue lights. My heart pounded like an old war drum, and I found myself drawn towards it like a moth to flame. See, I was a detective once. Not just any detective, but the lead homicide investigator for the city. Age and a bum knee had taken me off the streets, but they couldn't take the streets out of me. And that's how I ended up standing on the outskirts of a crime scene, looking at the chaos with an old, nostalgic glint in my eyes. I was just another face in the crowd until I made the rookie mistake of pulling out my old badge to reminisce. Before I knew it, an eager young officer had spotted me. "Detective," he called, jogging over. We were told to expect a specialist from downtown. "I guess that's you?" What could I do? The kid looked about ready to salute, and it had been years since anyone had called me detective. So, I did what any bored retiree with a flair for drama would do. I decided to play along. Before long, I was wrapped up in a whirlwind of briefings and evidence bags. It was like riding a bike, and I found myself falling back into old habits. It was exhilarating, intoxicating, and downright hilarious. The fact that I, an old man with nothing better to do, was leading a criminal investigation was the best joke I'd heard in years. But things escalated quickly. Suddenly, I wasn't just looking at photos. I was interviewing witnesses and comforting grieving relatives. The stakes were higher than a friendly poker game, and I was holding a full house with no idea how to play. The turning point came when the real specialist arrived. A young woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She knew something was up the moment she walked in. She had a look in her eyes, the same look I used to give rookies when they messed up. That's when I knew the gig was up. But instead of turning me in, she laughed. She laughed until tears streamed down her face, and then she pulled herself together and said, "Well, old man, let's solve this case together." So, we did. We followed leads, connected dots, and pieced together a puzzle that had baffled the entire precinct. Along the way, we found a mutual respect for each other. She admired my old-school detective methods, and I was fascinated by her modern approach. In the end, we cracked the case wide open. A crime that had seemed like an impenetrable fortress fell at the hands of an odd duo, a retired detective and a young investigator. And when the dust settled, she turned to me, a sly grin on her face, and said, "Same time tomorrow, detective." The thing is, I was an imposter. I stepped into a world that was no longer mine out of nostalgia and a bit of boredom. I thought it would be a laugh, a brief trip down memory lane. But it turned into so much more. It was a chance to relive my past, to feel useful again, and to pass on the baton to the next generation. That's the funny thing about life. It's full of unexpected turns and plot twists. One moment you're sipping coffee, reminiscing about the good old days, and the next, you're solving crimes with a detective young enough to be your granddaughter. A neural narration story.